Commander Isabella Rodriguez stood at the United Earth Defense Force headquarters window, watching the massive alien vessels materialize above New York. Their hulls gleamed with an iridescent sheen that made Earth's most advanced spacecraft look primitive in comparison. After 20 years of preparing for first contact, humanity had expected many scenarios, but not this. They're broadcasting on all frequencies, Lieutenant James Wilson reported, his dark fingers flying across the holographic display, text and audio, translated into every major language. Isabella's jaw tightened as the message played. People of Earth, we are the Meridian Empire. Your world holds resources vital to our expansion. Submit to our authority or face extinction. You have one planetary rotation to comply. Well, Isabella said dryly, at least they're direct. She turned to face the emergency session of the Defense Council, 12 grim faces illuminated by the red emergency lights. Ladies and gentlemen, it seems first contact protocols are out the window. Admiral Hassan cleared his throat. Initial scans confirm what we feared. Their shield technology is beyond anything we've encountered in simulations. Energy weapons, railguns, conventional explosives, all likely useless. And their weapons? General Zhang asked. Plasma-based, from what we can tell. One shot could vaporize a city block. Isabella pulled up the tactical display, studying the formation of the Meridian Fleet. 30 capital ships, each nearly 2 kilometers long, surrounded by hundreds of smaller vessels. Standard invasion pattern, arrogantly expose. They clearly didn't consider Earth a threat. They're not even trying to hide their intentions, Isabella mused. Look at their positioning. They're preparing for a systematic conquest, not peaceful contact or even resource extraction. They want Earth as a colony. Commander Rodriguez, President Chen's voice cut through the murmurs of discussion. You've spent your career preparing for this scenario. What are our options? Isabella took a deep breath. Their technology is superior, but they've made 3 critical mistakes. First, they've revealed their intentions outright, giving us time to prepare. Second, they've positioned themselves within our atmosphere, making them vulnerable to certain unconventional tactics. And third, a small smile played at her lips. They've clearly never encountered a Deathworlder species before. Explain, the president demanded. Their shields are designed to stop energy weapons and high-velocity kinetic impacts. But what about sustained, relatively slow-moving projectiles? What about weapons that rely on rotation rather than pure velocity? Isabella pulled up the schematics for Project Thunderstrike, a classified weapons program she'd been overseeing. The A-47 was considered too unstable, too primitive compared to our energy weapon programs, she continued. But its unique properties, multiple rotating barrels, depleted uranium rounds, and most importantly, its ability to maintain sustained fire, might be exactly what we need. You want to fight an advanced alien empire with what amounts to a very large machine gun? General Zhang asked incredulously. No, Isabella corrected. I want to fight them with hundreds of very large machine guns, mounted on our most maneuverable aircraft, piloted by crews who understand exactly what's at stake. She gestured to the tactical display. Their ships are in atmosphere. They're not expecting significant resistance, and they've never faced weapons designed by a species that evolved on a death world. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Humanity had always known its homeworld was classified as a death world by theoretical xenobiologists. High gravity, extreme climate variations, dangerous flora and fauna. What they hadn't known was how that environment had shaped their approach to warfare in ways that might prove unexpectedly effective. How quickly can we deploy? President Chen asked. The first squadron of A-47s can be ready in 6 hours. We'll need a diversion to get them in position. Isabella's mind was already racing through tactical scenarios. And we'll need to broadcast a response to buy time. What kind of response? Isabella's smile grew wider. One that plays into their expectations. Let them think we're panicking, disorganized. Meanwhile, We'll show them why underestimating the Deathworlder species is their last mistake." As the council dispersed to implement her plan, Isabella turned back to the window. The Meridian ships hung in the sky like beautiful, deadly jewels, their crews likely congratulating themselves on an easy conquest. "Welcome to Earth," she whispered. "You're about to learn what happens when you back a clever ape into a corner." In orbit, Supreme Commander Vixtal of the Meridian Empire watched Earth's cities with growing satisfaction. Another primitive world, ripe for conquest. Their scans showed no energy shields, no faster-than-light capabilities, not even basic plasma weapons. This would be the easiest conquest of his career. He had no way of knowing that humanity was about to rewrite the rules of interstellar warfare, one spinning barrel at a time. Deep beneath the Rocky Mountains, in a facility unknown to most of humanity, Captain Ryan O'Neill watched teams of engineers making final modifications to the A-47 Thunderstrike squadrons. The massive rotary cannons gleamed under industrial lights, each barrel longer than a man was tall. The weapons had been considered obsolete when compared to experimental energy weapons, but now they might be humanity's best hope. "Status report." Isabella's voice came through his comm as her hologram materialized beside him. The commander had barely slept in the 20 hours since the Meridian ultimatum. "Final calibrations on Squadrons 1 through 4, Ryan reported, running his hand along one of the massive gun barrels. "The tungsten-uranium composite rounds are loaded, and we've implemented the rapid cooling system modifications. These babies can now sustain fire for twice as long without overheating." "And the carriers?" Ryan gestured to the massive aircraft being prepped nearby. "The XB-70 Valkyries have been retrofitted exactly to spec. Each one can carry 2 A-47s and enough ammunition for a sustained engagement. They're not pretty, but they'll get our people into position." Isabella's hologram nodded, studying the preparations with intense focus. "The Meridians are buying our act." Their latest transmission was practically dripping with condescension. "They're convinced we're scrambling in panic." "Little do they know," Ryan grinned. The past hours had seen the largest covert military mobilization in human history, all while maintaining a facade of chaos and disorganization on the surface. "How's the rest of the plan coming together?" "Better than expected. The Chinese and Russian squadrons are in position. European forces will be ready within 2 hours. And the diversionary strike teams are prepared to give our friends upstairs something to think about." A young engineer approached, saluting sharply. "Captain, Commander, we've completed the final simulations. The rotational velocity of the A-47s creates an interesting harmonic effect we hadn't anticipated. The rapid-fire spinning projectiles generate a kind of resonance pattern that might actually help penetrate energy shields." Isabella's hologram showed the first real smile Ryan had seen since the invasion began. "Explain." "The Meridian shields are designed to deflect single high-energy impacts, but the A-47s fire so many rounds in such rapid succession, all spinning at different frequencies. It's like throwing millions of pebbles at a soap bubble. Each one weakens the field slightly, creating microscopic fluctuations. Eventually, the bubble pops," Ryan finished. "How many rounds are we talking about?" "At maximum fire rate, about 8,000 rounds per minute, per gun, with 12 squadrons." The implications were staggering. The Meridians had based their entire defensive strategy on the assumption that a pre-FTL civilization would only have access to primitive weapons. They hadn't considered that those primitive weapons might operate on principles their advanced shields simply weren't designed to counter. "There's more," the engineer continued, practically bouncing with excitement. "We've analyzed their hull composition. The layered crystalline structure is incredibly resistant to energy weapons and single kinetic impacts, but sustained physical stress. That's another story. These rounds will literally shake their ships apart." Isabella's hologram flickered as she processed this information. "How much time until the ultimatum expires?" 3 hours, 17 minutes. Ryan checked his watch. "All squadrons will be ready in 2. "Good, Because I've just received word from our deep space monitoring stations. The Meridians have a second fleet approaching from the dark side of the moon. They're not taking any chances. Ryan's jaw tightened. They really want this planet. Of course they do. Earth is a treasure trove of resources, and we're just primitive natives standing in their way. Isabella's hologram showed her pacing, a habit she'd developed during long strategy sessions. But they've made a fundamental error in their assumptions. They think technology equals superiority. And we're about to prove them wrong. Ryan nodded to the massive rotary cannons. With the oldest principle in combat, overwhelming force applied to a weak point. Precisely. Humans didn't become the apex predators of a death world by being stronger or faster than everything else. We did it by being creative, adaptable, and absolutely relentless. Isabella's hologram turned to face the bustling facility. Status on the electromagnetic pulse devices. Ready to deploy. The moment they activate their plasma weapons, they'll get a nasty surprise. Might only buy us a few seconds, but in those few seconds, our pilots will be inside their minimum effective range. Isabella's expression hardened. The Meridians think they're dealing with primitive savages. Let's show them what savages can do with proper motivation. Across the facility, pilots were conducting final checks on their equipment. Each one had been chosen for their exceptional skills, and more importantly, their ability to think creatively under pressure. They would need both qualities for what was coming. In orbit, Supreme Commander Vikstol received the latest intelligence reports with growing amusement. The humans were behaving exactly as expected. Their military forces were scattered, their communications frantic and disorganized. A few pathetic attempts at resistance would make the victory all the sweeter. Sir, his second-in-command approached with a puzzled expression. We're detecting some unusual energy signatures from several mountain ranges. Should we investigate? Why bother? Vikstol waved a dismissive hand. Their primitive weapons are no threat to us. Prepare the second fleet for arrival. When the ultimatum expires, we'll show these humans the price of defiance. In the depths of the mountain facility, Ryan watched the final preparations with a mixture of tension and anticipation. Soon, very soon, the Meridians would learn why humanity's survival on a death world wasn't just about luck or evolutionary accidents. It was about turning every disadvantage into a weapon, about finding creative solutions to impossible problems. And sometimes, those solutions involved making things spin really, really fast. The ultimatum expired at dawn. Flight Lieutenant Prisha Patel watched her instruments as her Valkyrie carrier climbed through the cloud cover. 2 A-47 Thunderstrikes nestled in its modified weapons bay. Her squadron was part of the first wave. 12 carriers, 24 guns, and enough ammunition to turn the sky into a storm of rotating metal. Thunder Squadron, sound off, she called over the secure channel. One by one, her pilots checked in. Each voice steady, professional, despite the alien warships looming above. The Meridian fleet had begun their descent, their massive ships casting shadows over the world's major cities. Remember your training. Commander Rodriguez's voice came through crystal clear. The electromagnetic pulse will give you exactly 8 seconds of shield disruption. Make them count. The first plasma bolts streaked from the Meridian ships, aimed at military installations across the globe. They never reached their targets. Instead, carefully hidden EMP devices activated, sending pulses of electromagnetic energy rippling through the atmosphere. For a brief moment, the Meridian shields flickered. Thunder Squadron, execute, Krisha shouted, and 24 Valkyries burst through the cloud cover simultaneously, their stealth systems rendering them nearly invisible to conventional sensors. The A-47s deployed with precision, each pair of rotating barrels extending from their housing. Before the Meridians could react, the air filled with the distinctive sound that would soon become legendary across the galaxy, the bone-shaking roar of thousands of depleted uranium rounds spinning their way through space. Impossible. Supreme Commander Vixtal watched in horror as the primitive projectiles passed through his fleet's supposedly impenetrable shields. The rounds weren't particularly fast by space combat standards, but their rotation created harmonic patterns that disrupted shield coherence. And there were so many of them. "Hull breach on Deck 3. His tactical officer shouted. 4, 7. The impacts are creating resonance cascades throughout the ship's structure. Vixtal tried to rally his forces, but the humans had achieved complete tactical surprise. Their primitive aircraft darted between the massive Meridian ships with impossible agility, their weapons never ceasing their relentless barrage. In her Valkyrie, Prisha executed a tight turn that would have torn apart a lesser aircraft. Her A-47s tracked perfectly, maintaining their stream of fire directly into a Meridian cruiser's engine housing. The crystalline hull, designed to withstand energy weapons and single massive impacts, began to crack under the sustained assault. "Thunder 3, on your 6, her wingman called. Prisha rolled, narrowly avoiding a plasma bolt. The Meridians were recovering from their initial shock, bringing their point defense systems online. But it was too late. The first Meridian ship broke apart spectacularly, its hull literally shaken to pieces by the concentrated fire of multiple A-47s. The explosion lit up the morning sky, visible from the ground where billions watched in awe. "First blood." Commander Rodriguez's voice held grim satisfaction. "All squadrons, press the advantage. Don't let them regroup." The battle descended into chaos, exactly the kind of chaos humanity excelled at. The Meridian ships, designed for long-range energy weapon combat, found themselves trapped in a close-quarters brawl with an enemy that refused to fight according to conventional tactics. "Thunder Squadron, form up on me," Prisha called, noting with pride that she hadn't lost a single pilot. "Second wave approaching. Let's give them a proper welcome." The reinforcing Meridian fleet emerged from behind the moon, only to find their advance force in disarray. Supreme Commander Vixtal's flagship was listing badly, its once pristine hull riddled with thousands of impact points that had stressed the crystalline structure beyond its limits. "Status report," he demanded. 8 capital ships lost, sir. 15 more reporting critical damage. These humans, they're not fighting like a primitive species should. They're fighting like Deathworlders. Vixtal realized too late. His species had forgotten the lessons of their own history. That technology alone didn't determine survival. The humans had evolved on a world that tried to kill them daily, and it showed in their approach to warfare. On the ground, Isabella watched the tactical display with fierce pride. The Meridians had expected an easy conquest of a primitive world. Instead, they'd found themselves facing an enemy that had turned their own technological superiority against them. "All squadrons report ammunition reserves at 60%. Ryan's voice came through. "The Meridians are trying to pull back to high orbit." "Don't let them," Isabella ordered. "Once they're out of the atmosphere, they can bring their heavy weapons to bear. Keep them pinned down." Prisha acknowledged the order, leading her squadron in yet another attack run. The A-47s had proven more effective than anyone had dared hope, their simple yet devastating principle of operation overwhelming the Meridians' advanced defenses through sheer relentless force. "You know what the really ironic part is," Ryan commented as they watched another Meridian ship succumb to the sustained barrage. "They probably could have had this planet peacefully if they'd just asked nicely." Isabella's laugh was without humor. Typical apex predator mistake. They got so used to being at the top of the food chain, they forgot what it means to be hungry, to be the underdog. And now they're learning what happens when you corner a species that turned persistence hunting into an art form. We didn't become Earth's dominant species by being the strongest or fastest. We did it by never, ever giving up. Above, the battle raged on. Humanity's first interstellar war would be won not with elegant energy weapons or sophisticated shield systems, but with the same principles that had served them since the dawn of time: creativity, adaptability, and the simple, brutal efficiency of making things spin really, really fast. News of the battle spread across the galactic community like wildfire. The Galactic Council's emergency session descended into chaos as footage of Earth's defense reached their chambers. A pre-FTL civilization wasn't just holding its own against the mighty Meridian Empire, it was winning. Ambassador Zura of the Arcturus Confederation watched the feeds with growing fascination. The humans' weapons were absurdly simple in principle, rotating barrels firing metal projectiles at high speeds. Yet they were systematically dismantling the most advanced shield technology in known space. "It shouldn't be possible," her aide muttered, mandibles clicking in distress. And yet, Zyra gestured to the latest footage. "Observe." Thunder Squadron had just executed a maneuver that defied conventional space combat doctrine. Instead of maintaining distance and exchanging fire, the human aircraft dove directly into the Meridian formation. Their weapons never ceased firing, creating a web of spinning projectiles that transformed space itself into a shredding zone. On Earth, Commander Rodriguez received the first transmissions from other alien species. Most expressed disbelief. Some offered immediate diplomatic recognition. A few requested technical specifications for the A-47 Thunderstrike. "Quite the audience we've drawn," Ryan noted, watching the diplomatic channels flood with traffic. "Good," Isabella replied. "Let them see. Let them all see what happens when you underestimate humanity." In orbit, the battle had reached its critical phase. Supreme Commander Vikstol's flagship was barely operational, its once mighty hull resembling Swiss cheese more than a warship. The Second Fleet's arrival had only delayed the inevitable. 7 more capital ships lost, his tactical officer reported, voice trembling. "The humans, they're not just attacking our ships, they're systematically destroying our ability to retreat." Vikstol noticed it too. The human squadrons weren't firing randomly. They were targeting engines, weapons arrays, and shield generators with surgical precision. Each disabled ship became an obstacle, hampering the fleet's ability to maneuver or escape. Status of the planetary bombardment platforms. Inoperable, sir. Their rotating weapons create some kind of resonance effect that. A massive explosion cut him off as another ship succumbed to the relentless barrage. The humans had learned quickly, adapting their tactics to exploit every weakness they discovered. They fought like creatures evolved from persistence hunters, never letting up, never giving their prey a moment to recover. In her Valkyrie, Prisha led her squadron through what would later be known as the Thunderclap maneuver, a complex series of attack runs that trapped Meridian ships between crossing fields of fire. The A-47's unique properties meant that even missed shots contributed to the overall strategy, their spinning rounds creating zones of disruption that forced enemy ships into predictable evasion patterns. "Thunder Squadron, execute Pattern Delta," she ordered. "Let's show them what these primitive weapons can really do." The response was immediate and devastating. 24 A-47s fired simultaneously, their rounds spinning through space in carefully calculated patterns. The combined harmonic effect shattered shield generators across 3 Meridian capital ships simultaneously. From the council chambers, Ambassador Zura couldn't contain her amazement. "They've weaponized rotation itself," she breathed. "Every principle of modern combat says this shouldn't work, and yet, perhaps," her aide suggested, "we should reconsider our definition of advanced technology." The battle's outcome was no longer in doubt. The remaining Meridian ships, their sophisticated technology rendered nearly useless by humanity's primitive weapons, faced a choice: surrender or be systematically torn apart by an endless storm of spinning metal. Supreme Commander Vikstol made his decision. "All ships, stand down," he ordered, his pride finally giving way to survival instinct. "Send the surrender signal." On Earth, the announcement was met with measured celebration. Humanity had won its first interstellar war, but more importantly, they had announced their presence to the galaxy in unmistakable terms. "Incoming transmission from the Galactic Council," Ryan reported. "They're requesting an immediate diplomatic conference." Isabella smiled. Tell them we accept. But remind them, any future negotiations will be conducted with mutual respect. We may be new to the galactic stage, but we've earned our place here. As Thunder Squadron made their final victory pass over the crippled Meridian fleet, Prisha couldn't help but appreciate the irony. The aliens had come expecting to find primitive savages. Instead, they discovered that sometimes the simplest solutions, like making things spin really, really fast, were the most devastating of all. 6 months after the Battle of Earth, the Galactic Council's central chamber buzzed with unprecedented activity. Commander Isabella Rodriguez stood before the assembled representatives of 200 spacefaring civilizations, her dress uniform adorned with the newly created Stellar Defense Medal. "The terms are non-negotiable," she stated, her voice carrying across the vast chamber. "Earth will join the galactic community as a full member, with all rights and protections thereof. The Meridian Empire will withdraw all claims to Earth's space and resources. And most importantly," she paused, allowing her gaze to sweep the chamber, "the classification of primitive species will be permanently retired from diplomatic discourse." The Council's acceptance was unanimous. The footage of Earth's defense had changed everything. Dozens of worlds previously dismissed as pre-FTL primitives were now being rapidly reevaluated. The A-47 Thunderstrike had become the most requested technical specification in galactic history. In orbit above Earth, Prisha led a delegation of alien military observers through Thunder Squadron's training exercises. The Valkyries danced through space, their A-47s demonstrating the principles that had shattered conventional military doctrine. "The key isn't the technology itself," she explained to the amazed observers. "It's understanding that advancement doesn't always mean complexity. Sometimes the simplest solution, executed perfectly, is the most effective." The Meridian Empire's influence had waned considerably. Supreme Commander Vixtal, now leading a reform movement within his own society, had become an unlikely advocate for human innovation. "We thought ourselves invincible," he admitted in a widely broadcast speech. "The humans taught us that true strength lies not in technological superiority, but in adaptability and determination." Back on Earth, Ryan oversaw the integration of alien technology with human ingenuity. The first hybrid vessels were taking shape, ships that combined advanced FTL drives with modified A-47 arrays. The galaxy watched with mixed fascination and concern as humanity began its journey to the stars. "They're calling us the spinning death species," Isabella told her staff during a briefing. "Apparently, we've inspired a whole new field of weapons development based on rotational physics." The Arcturus Confederation had already proposed a formal military alliance. Ambassador Zira, in her recommendation to her government, wrote, "The humans possess something more valuable than advanced technology. They have the ability to look at a problem from angles no one else considers. They don't accept impossibility. They simply haven't found the right way to make something spin yet." As humanity prepared to take its place among the stars, Isabella reflected on how a single miscalculation by an overconfident empire had changed the course of galactic history. The Meridians had expected to find primitives, and instead discovered that evolution on a death world produced something far more dangerous, creatures who turned their very limitations into advantages. "Ready for the ceremony?" Ryan asked, interrupting her thoughts. The official induction of Earth into the Galactic Council was minutes away. Almost, Isabella smiled, watching a formation of Valkyries escort alien diplomatic vessels through the atmosphere. "You know what the best part of all this is?" "What's that?" "We're still just getting started. Wait until they see what else we can make spin." In the years that followed, humanity's influence spread across the galaxy. Their unique approach to problem-solving, born from millions of years of evolution on an unforgiving world, transformed everything from military doctrine to engineering principles. The term human innovation became synonymous with finding elegantly simple solutions to complex problems. And in military academies across the galaxy, new cadets learned the fundamental lesson of the Earth-Meridian War. Never underestimate a species that turned rotation into an art form, persistence into a strategy, and their own limitations into their greatest strengths. The universe, it seemed, had a sense of humor after all, and it spun in humanity's favor.